How are you this morning, Mr. Goss?
I am fine, sir.
Thank you
Couldn't
so
be a
much for
better
joining
day.
us.
Nice and cold here.
Oh, I bet. You probably have forgotten. I hope you have. I interviewed you, I think 3 years ago for AARP magazine, and you very kindly gave me 40 minutes of your time, and I have to say it was one of the best interviews I've ever done. So thank you for joining us. I understand that you're 98 now.
Well, yeah. I'm 98. I got, what about
3 weeks, 2 weeks.
8 more days, so I'll be 99.
Wow. Is your wife with you?
Nope, my wife's at home.
Okay, and am I right? Am I right in thinking that you've been married for 73 years?
That's exactly right.
Are you not impressed by my research there? I know that you've been married for 73 years.
Yeah, that's the best thing I ever did.
So,
How long you been married?
that's not a question that we should go into. That's definitely, yeah, that would open a very big can of worms. No. I'm having PTSD already. Thank you. Um, so, uh, I think you were 16 years old when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and I remember you telling me that you were a paper boy, that you were delivering papers. Is that right?
That's exactly true.
Tell us a little bit about that, because you ended up joining the U.S. Army. Tell us a bit about how you found out about Pearl Harbor.
I didn't know anything about Pearl Harbor. And when I was a young boy selling papers, they got a phone call that says, get up and pick up your papers and sell them. Extra. Pittsburgh, United States was bombed by Pearl Harbor. And you go up there, and I was in the traffic, and as the cars went by, I was waving the papers and hollering, and people were stopping and buying the papers and not even waiting for their change. I sold a lot of papers that day. I made some money for my mother. 16. I started that paper out when I was about 10.
You lived on a chicken farm, didn't you? Is it Pennsylvania? Where were you? In Pennsylvania on a chicken farm?
Right, that's exactly right.
For the sake of the audience, I'm going to take us from Pearl Harbor. You then, in 1943, you signed up. Is that right?
Yeah, they sent me a letter from my friends and enemies to join.
Okay, and then you trained, and I think that you went over to England and you spent a year in training in England with the 4th Infantry Division.
Well, I went over with the 4th Infantry Division to England, which is true. And I got to England, and I landed in Glasgow, Scotland. And from Scotland, I got out of. In fact, when I landed in Scotland, that's the first air raid I ever saw. And everybody was running. They were sending everyone into the air shelter, bomb shelters. But I didn't go in. I went out in the bushes and hid a little bit because I wanted to see what an air raid was like. And there was nothing to it. It was way down south, and I could hear the bombs going off, and I could see the searchlights going that the English had, and I didn't think much of it. And then I stayed here 1 or 2 days, I forget. They put me on a train, and I went all the way down through England and past London, all the way to the southern point across the bay from Falmouth, England. And there's where I was in the 4th Division. When I got in the 4th Division, I was in Buffalo, New York. They put me in there. Anyway, when I got down to the 4th Division, I wasn't there a week yet, and they called a big meeting in a building, and there was a whole bunch of guys were in there for this special meeting. And they told us that we're going to start a operation 531st Special Brigade. We're building a Special Brigade. And these are volunteers for anybody that's going to go into the Normandy invasion first. This is going to be this at Normandy Beach. And he said, you don't have to sign up. This is not what we require, but we're looking for volunteers that want to go into a special brigade. And I did that, me and a couple other guys. And when they said that, that room emptied out by 50% of it. The guys just left. And that's how I got in the 531st Brigade.
So tell us, take us to D-Day. I'm sorry to jump ahead too much, but take us to D-Day, because what was your role within that brigade on D-Day, Utah Beach? Take us there if you don't mind, sir.
You mean what was I supposed to do?
Yeah, what were you supposed to do on D-Day?
Well, I'm supposed to do exactly what I was told to do in England, what I trained for to do. And as I went into the beach, our job was in the brigade was to clear the beach, keep the Germans pinned down, so the engineers could come in and blow up all the mines and let the ships and supply lines come in. And that's what we did, the 531st Brigade.
Well, you say that's what you did. Can you take us through those moments when you arrived on Utah Beach at around, 6:30 a.m. on D-Day?
Yeah, that was at that time. When we left England in ships, the weather was so bad, and the guys in the ships were getting sick, seasick. Then they went across, we come across the channel there from England, and I don't know how close we got to France, but we couldn't see it. And then we climbed down the side of the ships in ropes and got into Higgins' boat. And when guys would slip and fall off the nets and get caught between the ship and the Higgins boat, that would break their legs or crush them up somehow, because the boats were bouncing up and down a lot. Then they'd haul those guys back up on deck and put them back to England. And then we loaded up our Higgins boats. And and these guys were all seasick. They were not fit for battle. Neither was I. But I never got seasick. I don't know why the Lord didn't make me sick, but he didn't let me get sick. Anyway, we get to that, and those guys were vomiting. I seen one guy, he vomited right in the officer's face. Off it went. And a guy scooped water out of that bay with a helmet and washed the officer off, And we kept going, and we got so close to the beach, as that we couldn't see it yet. And then the boats would all line up, and then we went in. That's the way it was. And we hit that beach. Why? It was we didn't hit the location we were supposed to hit. But when we did hit the beach, they dropped the ramp on that Higgins boat, and I seen those guys getting hit right away. The Germans busted. So I went over the side of the boat, and I ended up in the water about up to my chest. And I was holding my rifle above my head, and I was walking the best I could in that water. And when it didn't get so deep, and I could run a little better, and then I got to the beach. And I ran up to the beach, and I was hiding behind an obstacle there. And our assignment was to keep the Germans pinned down, get rid of as many Germans as you can, because they want the troops to come in and not hit those mines. Well, when I was laying behind that, they were machine gunning us, and I seen them shooting at an obstacle above me. And I thought, and they were shooting at the mines they had strapped to these obstacles to blow up the ships that might come in. So anyway, I made it to the beach. I don't know. It's hard to get track of exact time it was, but I know we landed there at 6:30, and I went over the wall, penetrated up through the hedges. I mean, I ran in a swamp that the Germans had flooded in there. And I was crawling up beside that swamp, and the water in that swamp had the paratroopers laying in it. Some of the paratroopers that, and if they were wounded, couldn't stand up, they'd drowned. So I made my way up through there, and I ran into a little church. The front end of that thing was blowed out. It was like a chapel or something. And the back end was blowed up, and all the pews that were in there were scattered all over. And on the altar was still the Bible laying there. The Bible laid there, and it was all full of dirt and dust. And I did take time. I brushed the Bible off and just looked at it. Then I went into the hedgerows and worked my way up through there. Now, our assignment was after you get to the beach, settle down, and the engineers come in, you make your way up to help the paratroopers out to St. Marie de Glisse. Well, I never made it to St. Marie de Glisse. I guess in the afternoon sometime I made it up as far as St. Marie de Mont. And I was laying in a ditch in St. Marie de Mont when I saw another parachute brigade coming in. And that scared me to death. I didn't know what was going on there. And I thought they were Germans coming after us. And then when they jumped, I was laying in that ditch by the cemetery. And after I was laying in that ditch in the cemetery, watching these paratroopers come down, I found out they was Americans, and that relieved me because I thought they were Germans. And there was one guy that was very, very late. And when he was coming down into that cemetery where I was hiding in that ditch. And he was hanging on by one hand and with his trench knife, cutting the straps off right away. He didn't want to take time to unbuckle anything. When he hit the ground, he let go and got behind a tombstone. And I called him over, and we were laying in a ditch together. Now, he's lost. He happened to be the jump sergeant of that plane. And I asked him, why'd you get out of there so late? And he says that pilot got so scared he banked it around, and he rolled clean back to the tail. He says, I had to crawl out my hands and knees to get out of that plane. So we laid there and talked about that. Now, he was lost. I was lost. Everybody was lost. And after a while, he says, well, he's going to go hunt his unit. And I said, I'll go find mine. And I did. It was in St. Rita Mont. And that's what happened there. That took most of the day. Then I ran into a guy that I knew, he was an officer. And he asked me to go back to the beach and get some ammunition for the machine guns and rifles and hand grenades. And they were getting short, and I was short too. So I runs back to the beach, and I had another fellow with me that was supposed to be, but we gets back there, and here comes an American plane in, and the American plane come diving down and made a victory roll and went way back up high. Then the Americans were shooting at him. And the Americans were shooting at him. They thought he was a German plane coming in. And I even took a couple shots at him. Well, he bailed out of that plane. He was very high by the time. It looked like a beehives were all around that plane. I don't know how they could live through that. He bailed out. He did get hit, and he landed in a channel there, and the plane was coming down, and I was in a hole there, and I could see that plane coming closer. It looked like it was coming right down to my pocket. And a wing tore off of that thing, and it sort of made it drift away, and it hit the ground I'd give it maybe 50 or 75 feet away. When that thing hit the ground and the ammunition started exploding, I bounced clean out of that hole. And I crawled on my hands and knees, and I found another hole. There was already two guys in that one. And we laid there till all the explosions quit off. slowed down. And you know, right there's where I started smoking. I asked one of the guys for a cigarette, and he gave me a Camel, and I didn't smoke. But I started right there. Then I had to go to the ammunition dump, and they had a sergeant there that knew everything was there, but everybody told him what we needed. He says, and he showed me, he showed two of us how to get there and where it was stacked up. But he says, I ain't going in there, not with that shelling coming in. He said, if they hit that, they're going to blow this whole beach up. So we went in, my buddy and I, we got what we needed, cases of it. We dragged it out, and a guy in a Jeep come and says, hey, if you guys got a load, we'll I can take you up there in a Jeep. So we put it in the Jeep, and he rode us back up to St. Marie de Mont. And I gave that to the officer, and he was glad to get it, and the guys were glad to get it. And there's where I spent my first night in that romantic country of France in a ditch by St. Marie de Mont. That's where I spent my first night in France. And I was laying in that ditch at night, and I think things were hitting me here and it hit me there, and I wonder what the heck is this? And by God, those frogs were over there and jumping in the hole. They like the, I don't know, there's after moisture or something. There's a lot of frogs. And when I get in the hole, that's what was scared me. Then after that, why, the battle continued and went on straight down towards Cherbourg.
So
See,
you know, Warren, you know that the English nickname for Frenchman is a frog, yeah?
Yeah.
So take us from D-Day, 6th of June. Your division lands on Utah. I think there were less than 200 casualties on Utah, most of them from mines. And then you fight on through the hedgerows to Cherbourg. Tell us a bit about that hedgerow fighting. I mean, was it absolutely horrific? Was it the worst fighting that you were engaged with?
Well, was it was an, I don't know. It was different than what we were trained to do. Now those hedgerows were pretty high, pretty wide, a lot of shrubberies on it, and we had hand grenades and a cricket. And you'd listen, and if you heard voices on the other side, and they would sound Germans, or you heard talking, sometimes they'd talk. You could imagine it was about 10 feet apart. And you could hear voices because everybody was trying to talk low. And we had a clicker. We'd run the clicker twice, and if they'd answer back once why he was an American, he was okay. And if you didn't get the answer back, you threw a hand grenade. So we got out through all right. A lot of guys didn't. And I don't know how they come up with a count for the dead because I don't think our brigade had any left. Wasn't too many left in our brigade. And I know when we went to the when I went to the Army reunions, my God, there wasn't many there. But anyway, through the Normandy, that's what happened. You know, in England though, they trained us for everything. There was 3 bunkers that they told us to get. One on the beach, and one was in about I'd give it 100 yards of it that far, and the other was way down toward Cherbourg out on the peninsula. The first bunker we took, the second bunker was for radio operations, and they would. When I went in there, there was about 3 Germans in there. That's all. It was pretty easy because they had no weapons in there. They just had their rifles, and we took them prisoner out of that bunker and traded it off. Then the Americans put their equipment in there. Now, those Germans would radio all those big guns they had control of to shoot the ships. Now, when the Americans took it over, then they was radioing the ships how to shoot the Germans. It was like a trade-off. But bunker number 3 was way down towards Cherbourg. Not in Cherbourg, it was out on the peninsula there. And we got to pass that. And they decided to pass it up, so we did. And then I can remember laying in Cherbourg on top of the hills up there, and the airplanes were bombing it. And they'd make a circle around, they'd fly, and they'd drop their load, and they'd circle out on the beach, and you go back and jump the second load, and then go back to England. I thought these guys got a pretty snappy job. So anyway, we got to England, or Cherbourg, and we took Cherbourg, and the 4th Division was there too. I don't know what happened though, because every place the 4th Division went, it seemed like our brigade was right there helping them. And one guy told me that you're really still in the 4th Division. He says, but they're just loaning you out for different companies. I was either good or bad. I don't know what the heck they wanted. So that's what happened in Cherbourg. In Cherbourg, they made me an MP. Now they had a port, see. I guess this was 28 or 30 days later, I don't know. And all the equipment was coming through Cherbourg, and they wanted me to direct the traffic for each piece of equipment and what direction it went. Well, I didn't know what the equipment was. And I had such a traffic jam sitting there, and it mixed up. The tanks would come in, the half tracks come in, the jeeps come in, the trucks come in, and they had locations for each one. And I had a heck of a mess there. The officer came to me and he says, "Goss, get back in the lines. You're no damn good here." So we gets back right where I belong. Then the subject came up about this pillbox that was on the hill. I wished I could show it to you. It was the biggest thing I ever saw. Now they have to get some men to take this pillbox. And I would have did it if they'd asked me, but they picked out another squad to do it. And then when they reported back, they say, "Hey, that was an easy one. All they had to do was knock out a couple of machine gun nests. And then most of the guys that was in that trench, that could shoot from there all the way up to the English beach, and then also from there to England. It was like a 3-story bunker. They had places to eat in there. They had places to sleep. I never seen, it's the biggest thing I ever saw over there. And then from there, they sent me back to, and then I got involved in St. Lo after that. I didn't get involved in a big part. I was involved in St. Lo, and I can remember the 51s coming in and strafing St. Lo and dropping their bombs, and all those, they was dropping them in the wrong place and firing on their own troops some of the times there. And the only thing I can remember there is the shells that was floating down through the air that was hitting us. That would hurt too. So then from there, I got back to the beach. And I was on the beach for, I don't know, a couple of days with nothing to do. And they broke up our brigade, our 531st part of it. If you look at the monument over there, they got all the outfits that was in the 531st Engineers. And our brigade was the front, is it 531st Special Brigade on the front of that monument. That's the one that we broke it up. And they sent us back to different outfits. Well, by that time, I got in a truck, went up to some other outfit, and they had me in a house up there with a bunch of guys. And I ended up in what they call a repo depot camp. And there they would supply the soldiers who needed to go into battle, the replacements. And they were mostly young fellows from America where they come in. Put us in a truck, and I was staying in this one home, and they had different houses they were staying in. And then the guys from the front would come in, and I slept there. I was supposed to go on KP, and I didn't, and other things like that. Then I got I got in a truck and they went up toward the bridge. The guys come in, it was especially this one guy. He come in, he was a sergeant. And he comes in our room, it was at nighttime. He says, anybody here seen combat? Now, these were all United States guys that come over for replacements. And I met my friend there, Tony Flossie was his name. And I met Tony and I talked to him and told him about some of the things that happened in Normandy. Of course, we talked about that to him and I. And I took a liking to him. And then Tony says, yeah, this guy here saw him combat. He was in Normandy. And the sergeant says, I'll take him. Tony says, I'll go with him. And that's how I got in the 70th Division. And that was called Bennett's Bastards. And that's what they were called. And he took as many men as he needed, and other guys took as many men as they needed. There were replacements, all replacements. Sent us back to the lines of the 70th Division. And I stayed in that 70th Division to the end of the war. That's right.
Warren, take us through some of the dates here. I mean, I'm going to recap June 6, 1944, Utah Beach. You survive by some miracle the hedgerow fighting. You liberate Cherbourg. Then you head back towards central Normandy to Saint-Lô, which is late July 1944. And then you go to a Repel-Depel, the infamous Repel-Depel. And then you end up in the fall of 1944. You end up in the Trailblazer Division. I've just posted the insignia that you wore on your shoulder. Take us from what's the first action you had? I believe it was the Battle of the Bulge. You went on the line on the 26th of December, 1944. Take us to the first day of action of the Battle of the Bulge.
I didn't know when the first day was coming. I just knew it was going to start. But they did. And we had to march up there. See, during that, I was in when I was in the 70th, I was in the Battle of the Ruhr of England. And that was a bad battle from village to village to village. And that's when they got involved after I crossed the Saar River. They got involved in the Battle of the Ruhr because that was an industrial part of all of Germany. It had everything over there, coal mines, lumber mills, factories. And then the Bulge started. I didn't know what a Bulge was. I didn't know what nothing was. Oh, I knew how to fight a damn war. I didn't know what it was. We marched and get at snow, and I get up there. We was closer to the Ardennes. But I never made it to Belgium. I just made it about to the border. And when the Germans came through there, my feet were so cold I could hardly run. And I know Tony, he was in good shape. He got away. And I couldn't run and keep up with him because we did lose ground there. We fell back a lot. And I got under a tank, and Tony covered me up with that snow, took away all the footprints. And under that tank, I lay there and I took my shoes off, rubbed my feet, and rubbed them, and put clean socks on. And I laid there all that night, most of the next day, and I could hear the Germans going by. Well, then Tony came up, and he scraped the snow away, and he says, "Hey, Ward, you can go now." He says, "We got it cleared out here." He says, "They moved on past." So anyway, that's what happened there. So I went back to the lines, and it was just a terrible fight from village to village, all the way up. Every day there was a new village you had to fight through. We got into the Bulge there, in the Argonne Forest it was. And I never got to Belgium at that point. But when the tree bursts were coming in, a lot of guys were getting hurt there. And cold, my goodness, it was so cold. And strange things happen. I seen a lot of guys up there, they were saying their prayers. and they'd cussing out the Germans, and the one guy's reading the scriptures, you know. And I never did get on my knees and pray and ask and promise God anything. I never did that. I talked to God as if just the same way I'd talk to you. I'd say, Lord, I need help here. I need some good legs. I got some running to do. And I got caught in a cornfield in one of those villages. And the Germans was in a factory and had a machine gun nest in a smokestack that went up through this factory. They had top of that. They had a machine gun nest up there, and they caught me in the middle of that field. And I would duck from corn shock to corn shock, and I had to retreat. And I'd say to the Lord, Lord, turn this thing into metal because I ain't gonna. I need some help here. And I did that all the time I was over there. In fact, I still do it. Anyway, I gets back to the lines. Now the guys are worried about how they're going to get that damn machine gun. And I happened to see a 37 anti-tank gun sitting there. And I knew how to work that, but I did learn that in basic training. I said, I could shoot that gun there. Let's load it up. So we loaded it up, and I aimed at that thing, pulled the rope and set that thing off, and I hit it square right at that. Then I put the second shell in and give it another blast, and that got rid of the machine gun nest. And then we moved on up the town. So that's the way it goes.
Warren, can you tell us about when you crossed the Saar River? What date was that exactly when you crossed the Saar River? So you survived the Battle of the Bulge, then you move on into Germany. When did you cross the Saar River?
Well, at that time I think I was 19 then, because I had a birthday over there. I had 2 birthdays over there. Anyway, it was before the Bulge. We crossed that Saar River, and there's a place where I run a lot of patrols. I run a lot of patrols down to the back. They'd send me on patrols to penetrate the German lines. All I had was a map and a compass. Sometimes I had field glasses, and I'd mark on this map where the German 88 was, and then this guy's busy. He's fussing around there about something. He must have dropped the pencil. Anyway, that's what I did.
The Battle of the Saar.
And when I crossed the Saar River, we went down it was a pretty steep hill going down to the river. And those cannons were roaring and shooting over our heads as we approached. And I wish I had time to tell you about the patrols we used to run. I'd run a patrol down there. We had squad was at Bennett, and we'd lay along the railroad tracks that was on the side of the river there, and we'd throw hand grenades and shoot across the river and just raise Cain as much as we could. And we'd keep hollering, bring up the boat, bring it. And the Germans would shoot back, and we were throwing hand grenades, and we spread out, 7 guys spread out. And Bennett went to throw a hand grenade, and his hand got caught under the wire that shifts the railroad tracks. And he hollered, grenade. And I thought he said, it's a raid. So I turned over my back, and I was shooting into the Germans. I thought we passed them up. I was shooting at every bush and tree I could see. And I had a bullet checked it, crossed in my rifle, and it wouldn't work. And those tracer bullets made just enough light that I could see the chamber. The bullet got tangled up because I had gloves on. That's what happened there. Well, when Bennett set off that grenade, a guy jumped over top of me. I can still remember that because I was laying on my back then. And he hit the ground. The grenade went off, and it got never hurt nobody. But it did blow the heel off of one man's boot. That's all it did. Because that grenade rolled under the railroad tracks, and that sort of buffled it up a little bit. But he dropped it. I mean, when his hand got caught on a wire. And there's a lot of other brigades, raids that we had done that. Well, the time come when we actually had to cross the river. So they gave me 40-pound shaped charge. I don't know why then, but they knew why. And Tony, he was carrying a fuse. And we get to these rubber boats and we rolls across the river. And there was another thing in how the guys got across that river. That was a lot of lead flying there. Got across the river up to another concrete wall. So we went down beside this wall and we hopped over the top of it, up the bank. And there was a road there that had a cross on it with all this barbed wire wrapped around it. And he had to move it, and there was a bunker, a pillbox sitting there too. And we some guy wanted up to move that thing. As soon as he moved it, the doggone thing blew up. Now nobody else, he didn't get hurt. He just blew it up. And then a couple other guys, they went up and got rid of that. So Tony and I went up there. And our job was to get rid of the pillbox. Now this is dark time. And we crawls up beside the pillbox. And I ties a rope on the handle. Now those shaped charges, they were 40-pound of TNT. They shaped like a road cone. And the fuse went right in the top. Tony was carrying a fuse. And I says to Tony, I'll tie this on here and I'm going to let it down. And I'm as far as you can reach, and you tie that, put that fuse in there. And then when you pull the pin, get out of here and roll down the bank and I'll drop it. So he did that. He pulled the pin. I dropped it by the entrance. And he rolled away and I rolled away and that thing exploded. Boy, and it's what it does. It cleans a pillbox out pretty quick. The concussion of that thing is so great that it puts those men out of condition. The men inside it can't do anything because the sound has no place to go. Then I went back to Cherbourg and I went back to the riverbank and I went into town and I was laying in the corner of the street there. And I seen so many tracers in that street going back and forth in all directions. Some were American, some were German. And I figured, oh, ain't nobody going down that street. I don't know how we did it. I really don't. But we got that town cleared out.
So, Warren, this is what we're talking about now is the 17th of February, 1945, when you guys crossed the Saar River, and then you took out a pillbox on the other side of the river. And then you head towards Saarbrücken, the German city of Saarbrücken. For our viewers, I've posted a couple of pictures. There's one of a machine gunner in Saarbrücken, and then there's another picture, a color picture. Tell us about Saarbrücken and then take us to the end of the war. Saarbrücken to the end of the war, if you don't mind, sir.
Well, Saarbrücken had more than one machine gun in it, I can tell you that.
I know. I just posted one picture. Sorry, there were probably hundreds and hundreds. But anyway, take us through Saarbrücken to the end.
The 70th Division ended up to be a pretty good fighting outfit. They were really good. And you know, when I went into Germany and crossed that river, and that was our first trip in Germany land, though I thought we hit a new country. Those people had everything. when I got into the villages, they all had slaves, and I fought from there, from village to village. That from there, it was like the Battle of the Ruhr. That's where the Battle of the Ruhr really started. Now there was a big parade in there in Saarbrücken, but I never got no damn parade. I just stayed with the outfit. I never was in a parade. Anyway, we was going to house, village to village, and fighting all the way through. Those Germans were so bad. I hated them so much. I didn't want to see one brick stuck to another over there. I hoped they'd blow the whole damn place up. It was really bad, and the people were bad. A lot of the civilians were good, but the German soldiers, SS troopers, were bad people. They wouldn't take a prisoner. And it's hard to remember everything. I can remember it when I'm sleeping good.
Where were you at the end of the war?
And I went into Saarbrücken, and from Saarbrücken into the Saar, and into the forest up there. There's where I slept in the cold weather. Then after the Bulge, I went back into Germany, and I fought my way up. And by that time, the battles was getting a little easier. You know, those German people over there, every one of them had slaves. Every one of them.
Warren, can
Others
I?
had them. If you was a Russian, you was a coal miner, you never came out. You ate there, lived there, and sleep there. The mules got treated better than the people.
Warren, where were you at the end of the war? Tell us about the end of the war. Where were you?
Frankfurt. That's where the war ended for me. I was in Frankfurt. They took Frankfurt, and that's where I ended up.
Now you told me a story about the last shot that you fired in World War II. Can you remember the last shot that you fired in World War II?
You damn right I can. Most probably they'd throw me in jail for that. I was in a hospital over there. I'm not sure what the town was, but I know it was close to. I think it was Langdon. I'm not sure, but I was in that hospital. And they were examining me. That's where the war ended for me. So they told me, you be the guard at the gate, two guys, we get down there and sit in the gate. And we had to guard the gate and don't let no Americans out or Germans in. And then in the hospital, Germans and Americans were all together. Everybody was wounded in there. And over in the field over there was a great big electric tower where they supply electric to all these towns. Now, I could see towns shining. I don't know if it was Frankfurt or not. I don't know. But you can see the glow in the sky. And I says to my buddy, I says, see that transformer over there? I says, watch these lights go out. And I put an AP in that rifle, and I shot one shot, and I hit that transformer. And boy, that thing exploded, and the sparks were flying. And I looked down, and you could see that everything going blink, 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 getting darker and darker. Pretty soon, all the lights went out. And, I didn't know this, but right behind me was a German from the hospital, and he was laying in back of us. And he says, "Das ist gut, Houston." And he was all bandaged up. He had trouble too, see. And that's what happened there. That was my last shot. And then I went back to camp. And I don't know why I was late going back to camp that time. I think a couple of us decided to go into Frankfurt, and I got back. And it was on a park, the Germans highway, parkway, like the Autobahn, they called it. And we was walking on that, and then I'd lay down in the concrete there, and that's where we'd sleep. We'd take turns sleeping on the concrete, and one guy stand guard. And then if a car would come, we'd get it right in, and that's what we did.
Warren, you came back to the US at the end of the war, and unbelievably, you were headed towards Japan. Tell us
Well,
about that.
I never did head towards Japan. I was cut. I had my papers cut for that, and I came back to see my mom and dad. You know, I come home on a Liberty ship. That Liberty ship was a nice place. They assigned 3 guys to a bunk. 3 guys to one bed. Can you figure that out? So every guy got 8 hours, but when it come your turn to sleep, maybe you didn't want to sleep. You know, it was all different hours you slept. It only took 7 days though. So they in the middle of that boat, they had all these life rafts stacked up in the middle, and I looked up there and I said, "By God, I'm going up there." So I crawled up that thing and took my blankets with me, and there's where I slept every night, all the way home. And then I got home to see mom and dad, and I think I had almost a week at home, and then I had to go back, and I packed up my duffel bag. I remember, and I walked across the field, Old Scott Avenue, carrying my duffel bag. I was walking up there and I was crying like a baby. I did not want to go back to Japan and fight the damn Japs because I knew nobody could do this twice. There's nobody in the world can do it twice. Because I was in battle from the time I got to England until the very damn last day. And the 70th Division stayed over there, and they ended up in the occupation force. And from what I heard, from what I learned, and I'll tell you, the Lord gave me a blessing that you would never believe. He just unbelieve what He did for me. And these guys, let me back up a little bit. Let me back up the whole way. I was in England watching air raids, and I seen all these airplanes fighting and diving around, and it was exciting to me. And I watched the women shoot the guns trying to get the planes down. Then I see a plane come down. I didn't know if it was American or German, but to an 18-year-old kid, that was exciting. And I had to write a letter to my mother, and I was telling her about the action and the shooting going on and the bombs coming in. Because down in England, that's where all the boats were parked. And I wrote her a letter just to tell her about that. And she sent me a letter back, a very, very short letter. And she sent me, and I always carried a little Bible with me. And she sent me this letter back, and she says, "Warren, you read the 91st Psalm." She said, "I want you to read this every day." She says, "Because this letter was written for you 2,000 years ago. The Lord knows you, and He's going to save you." And it's the 91st Psalm. You know, I've been carrying that Psalm with me since that day. You read the 91st Psalm and you'll see what my mother wrote, and that was truly my life. And that's what happened over there.
So how did you manage to avoid being sent to Japan? How did you not get sent to Japan?
Well, we had a friend, and we didn't even know him very well. It was called Truman. And he dropped the bomb. And then everything was canceled when he set that bomb off. Even the ships turned around and came back. But they sent me home and it discharged me. Because I was so scared I could know damn well you can't do that 2 times.
Warren, what did you do after the war? What happened after the war?
Well, I went home. First, I went to the hospital. When I was discharged, I ended up in the hospital in Pittsburgh, Vets Hospital, and I was in in Saarbrücken, living staying in those houses. I got pinned in there. Some big buildings and stuff has caved in on me. And I went to the hospital in a tent. That was a field hospital. And they didn't see no blood. And they said, "You're good to service, go on back." So they sent me back. They rode me back in a Jeep. But I was passing blood, and every time I'd take a crap or go to the bathroom, I'd pass blood. And then I ended up over there in hospital in Pittsburgh, Vets Hospital, and they replaced a part of my intestines. It was smashed and tore, and then they fixed it. And then I come home, and my dad says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to just hang around a little bit." He said, "You're going to work tomorrow." There ain't nobody hangs around his farm. You're going to work tomorrow. And he was absolutely right, and that's the best thing I could ever done. Because so many of those guys came back, and they did hang out, and they hung out in bars and drank, and they talked about things, and they went nuts. But my dad saved that. He was hard as nails, that old man.
So, Warren, when I last talked to you, you said that you'd been going into high schools and talking about the war.
Yeah.
What do you tell kids in America today when you go into a high school?
Well, a lot of those high schools come to the Heinz History Center, and then I talk to them there. But I did go to high school, so I went to Schiller, the local, about 4 different schools I was going to. And I tell them the same thing. And I tell them when the Germans had, all the German people had slaves. If you belonged to that Nazi party, you had slaves. And you just imagine you're in a house, you live in a house, it's nice and clean. You could go play golf, your wife could go play tennis, and the slaves take care of everything. The farmers had 4 men to a farm, 1 tractor for 3 farms, and they had to rotate them every day, and that's what I tell them. And they say, "Are they all black?" I says, "Nope, they're all white." They'll never know how bad Germans were. But I don't have a hatred for them no more. Thank God for that. He did take that away from me.
Are you thinking about going back to Normandy for D-Day for the 80th anniversary? Are you thinking about going back?
I'll go back if I can have my wife taken care of. My wife's in bad shape, and I've been married to her for 73 years, and I don't want to lose her. And if I leave her alone, because my daughter will go with me, see. And I've been married to that. The good Lord gave her to me. Nobody else, just me. I was lucky. And I just don't want to leave her without protection.
What did World War II teach you about your country, about America?
It taught me a lot. And I don't know what they taught me, but they taught me a lot. I found out America was a young country. It wasn't an old country compared to them, to what they have. Our young country did more to help all these other countries out than any other country in the world. That's what I learned about that. They had Americans helping English. They helped the Germans after the war. They paid for every damn cow that was killed over there, fixed up that chapel was blown up, fixed the buildings up. Americans paid for all that. And they helped Belgium. They even helped Russia. Russia was supplied by a lot of Studebaker trucks. Train loads and boat loads come into Russia from America. There's no other country in the world that did as much for this world as America. And I say, God bless America, because I don't know why they're letting the people ruin it. Well,
anyway, Warren, we have a lot of comments here. Thank you for telling us your story. A fantastic talk. Thank you for your service. I just wanted I wanted to just say, on behalf of friends, thank you very, very much for joining us today. I'm very grateful to European for your service, and I wish you all the very, very best. You've been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, sir. Do you have any final message for us? Any final words for us?
Well, the most final words I can say, take America, all the people in this country, and pray for the good leaders that we need in this country.
Yet again, say thank you so much, sir. You had an incredible war. The fact that you are with us today is a miracle. And thank you so much